I'm clearly doing back-to-back reviews. I am here today reviewing Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. Now, if you have watched my review of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, you will know that I absolutely raved about that book. And this book was no different. Wow, what can I say about this book? It is amazing. Obviously, I can say less about this book because it is a sequel. But I did this as a buddy read with Brooke from Brooks Books and Jade from Paperback to Hardback. I say I did it as a buddy read with them. They are extremely fast at reading. They're like 400 or 500 pages every 2 or 3 hours. I'm more like 100 pages in 3 hours. So I did kind of come to a deal with them where I would start this book a day early to give myself a bit of a head start. And then because of how fast they read, there was a very good chance that we'd end up finishing the book at the same time. So I read this book earlier and I felt quite sad because I couldn't chat to people about my theories because no one had read the book. But this book follows Pip Fitzamobi, who is the protagonist of the first book, and she has now made a podcast about her experiences in the first book and has also made the declaration that that was a one-time thing. It affected her too much to ever consider doing that again. She has to do what is best for her and stop and never venture into that again. She has to assure people that that is what she's doing. And then somebody goes missing. It is somebody she is close to, or the relative of somebody she's close to, should I say, more of. And she decides, even though she says, I can't do it, I'm sorry, as much as I care about you, I need to protect myself. But then she realises that the police won't do anything to help. She realises very quickly on that the police can't help because they don't class the missing person as high risk because it's not the first time they've actually gone missing. So she decides this time, this is the last time she is going to help because she doesn't believe that it's a typical he's run off and will come back. She believes something has happened. So she takes up the case, she begins investigating, and one of the things I have to say I loved about this book is that it's kind of it's a direct continuation. This is set a couple of months after book one, but this book, it takes so much information from the first book. Like, there are things that happen in book one that become really relevant in this, and I don't know why, but that really blew me away. And I think maybe because I read book 1 and 2, like, one after the other, like, immediately, it made it better for me because I was like, right, so I'm not reading separate stories. This is just a follow-on story, and it was really good. When you get to book series, it tends to be book 1 has its own plot, and then book 2 has its own plot, maybe 1 or 2 references to the other book. And with this one, it was book 1 has a plot, book 2 has a plot, but the plot is directly related to book 1-ish, like subplots are. And it's really important that you read book 1, otherwise you won't understand what's going on. And this was very well written. I love this. I thought this was an easier read for me than book 1, and I'm not really sure why, but I really thought it was an easier read. I felt as though it had a lot of I'm just flicking through to find it. I felt as though it has a lot of mixed media formats. Like, it has interviews, in this book, for example, has photographs of evidence and things like that. And book 1 had that, but I felt like it just kind of taken an extra jump to this one. Like, in book 1, it was basically a lot of interviews and things like that, whereas book 2, I'm just looking for it. Book 2, they've got things like real life photographs and courtroom sketches, and it just feels like the next level. Like, it's stepped up and it's very much progressed with this book, and I loved how it's progressed, and I thought it was so interesting and good, and seeing all of these different formats made me want to read it more because I was excited to see what came up next. It's not a criticism, I've got to give it a 5-star book. I didn't really have any complaints to it. The only thing I will say about this is I felt as though the ending was not as strong as the ending from book 1. If, obviously, you can't read book 2 without book 1, but if I'd read this book and it wasn't related to book 1 in any way, I would have thought it was a good ending. but the ending wasn't as strong as book one. Didn't take anything away from it. I thought both of the books were excellent. I thought this book was so fun and easy to read, and it was definitely next level compared to the first book. But the ending was just a tiny, literally a smidge less likable than the first book, and that is literally the only negative thing I can say about the book. I really hope that Holly Jackson continues this. I don't want it to become too much of a continuation where you're like, right, why is she carrying on now? Because clearly, as I've said earlier in the plot, Pip doesn't want to keep doing this because of how badly it affects her. And I hope that if it continues, it's done in a really good way that explains why she's doing it, rather than her just continuing for the hell of continuing, because that is not Pip's character. But I really hope it continues. I want to see more of the characters. I feel as though this was just really good because you got to see a lot of character development from those characters that appeared in book one. Pip's character grew and changed so much because of the events of book one, and I think that is so important in something like a sequel, because a lot of the time you can read a book and the character's pretty much the same despite going through horrible things, and where you see Pip's character has been affected and moulded and changed by what happened to her in book one. So loved it. I thought it was great. Excellent characters. I thought very strong characters. I loved learning more about other characters. So absolutely great. Loved it. I thought it was great. 5-star read. Would recommend. Same as book one. 100% would recommend that too. If you have not seen my review for book one, really you should, because checking these reviews out of order is very strange. It is. So that is everything I can say. And that is it from me. So, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to click the bell and subscribe. If you're already subscribed, you are wonderful. Thank you so much. Other than that, I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and then during this time intermittently throughout the week. And until next time, I will see you later.